We still don't have the full numbers from the Iowa caucus, but the results so far, the ones we've been given, indicate a narrow lead for Pete Buttigieg, who was once a mayor of a minor city in the Midwest. A big win for the little mayor? Not so fast. Buttigieg's campaign had close financial ties to Shadow, that's a tech company that completely screwed up the results on Monday. And then this, today, Iowa Democrats were caught, apparently mistakenly, giving hundreds of Bernie Sanders votes to total non-entities like Tom Steyer and Deval Patrick. You add it all up and you begin to wonder, are people trying to stop Bernie? A lot of Bernie supporters think they are. Wouldn't be a surprise, actually. Democratic insiders in the press have made it clear they'll do almost anything to deny Sanders the nomination. Jimmy Dore is one of the very rare independent thinkers on the internet, one of the last left. He's got a podcast. He's a comedian. We're happy to have him join us tonight. Jimmy, thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm not a conspiracy guy. I don't think I'm paranoid, but just looking at the accumulation of facts, which grows larger every day, I'm starting to think there's a real effort, not in public, but behind the scenes, to prevent Bernie Sanders from getting the nomination by the Democratic establishment. Am I imagining that?
You are not imagining that. No, you know what, Tucker, when I look at what's happening in the Democratic primary, and especially what just is happening right now in Iowa, what I think is not only is democracy alive, but it's thriving.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
No, this is really, of course, this is the DNC, right? By the way, they took over the counting of the votes. Did you know that they took over the counting of the votes? The DNC came in. Apparently, they don't have anybody who knows how to count stuff in Iowa, so they have to have the DNC come in. I don't know if you know, the DNC rigged the last primary against Bernie Sanders. Yeah, so those are the same people who, and by the way, the same people who rigged the primary against Bernie last time are the ones involved in making this app, right? So they got a bunch of people who worked on Hillary's campaign that work now at Shadow, and they helped build this app. And all of a sudden, and you know what, here's the thing, Tucker, and you know, I've seen Glenn Greenwald make this point before, is that if these were honest mistakes, you would expect some of the mistakes to go in Bernie's favor and some of the mistakes to go in the DNC's favor. But all the mistakes are always going in the establishment's favor. So that's how you know these aren't mistakes. This isn't. And by the way, when they release those, say, 62% of the vote, they're going to release those results. How did they decide to stop at 62%? Where's the transparency? Why did they pick those counties? How does this? There's no transparency. This is obviously, how are they going to cheat Bernie? This is how they do it, because if you know what the headline was all day yesterday and today on cable news, on CNN and MSNBC, is Pete Buttigieg is in the lead. He's retaining his lead. And that's the story they want everybody to know. And that's what half the country now thinks, is that Pete Buttigieg won Iowa.
But so there's so many levels of irony here. But I'm just picking this out of our head. Here's one. Some of the same people who are regurgitating this propaganda, who are counting the votes in Iowa, are the same ones who spent the last 3 years telling us that Russia was subverting our democracy and that the sanctity of elections was the most important thing in American life. Are you noticing this?
I am noticing that. Apparently, Russians work for Shadow, and they run the Iowa Democratic Party, apparently, because, so, yeah, of course, you know, I was one of the few shows that debunked Russiagate and saw through that, and, you know, that's this is all kind of tied together, because Russiagate is a result of the failure of the Democratic Party to present a platform that gets people who want to vote Democrat off the couch to vote for them. So they can't actually offer them anything because they're beholden to their donors. The same people who control the Republican Party control the Democratic Party. We don't really have two parties, right? So they have to do Russiagate and impeachment and all these these circus shows, right, to distract you from the fact that the Democratic Party doesn't represent workers anymore, that they actually represent big pharma, health insurance, the military-industrial complex, and Wall Street. And that's why all this is happening, and that's why they have to cheat Bernie Sanders, because he's going to upset their game, their money game, and that's why they got to stop him before. The first job of the Democratic Party is to stop the candidate who represents the workers, and then and only then can they turn their attention towards Donald Trump.
So is that why we never have debates about the tax code? We spend a lot of time on bathrooms. We spend a lot of time on these kind of peripheral social issues. But I can't remember the last time someone talked about carried interest. Can you?
Tucker, as Nancy Pelosi is ripping up Donald Trump's speech, she's passing his legislative agenda. So, and also, if you watched closely last night, you got to see her applaud Donald Trump's imperialism when it comes vis-a-vis of Venezuela, right? So, and I know you did good work on Venezuela. We all know these foreign entanglements are just CIA plots to steal resources and give it to American corporations. They admitted so much. John Bolton admitted on Fox News that that's what Venezuela was. So you saw the one-party rule last night. You saw Nancy Pelosi applauding and getting up with Juan Guaido, who is a CIA-appointed puppet leader of the Venezuela. So you saw that's the part I like to call out. That's when they're both in bed with the intelligence community. They're both in bed with the military-industrial complex. And so yeah, you're right. We're not talking about real things.
No.
We're talking about Russiagate. We're talking about a phone to the Ukraine. We're never going to talk about why wouldn't the Democrats had complete control of the government? They gave us a right-wing health care plan anyway. Oh, maybe it's because there aren't really two parties. There's one party in America, and they're both controlled by big business.
Jimmy Dore, you're going to take so much abuse for doing this show, but I hope you'll come back. Too few independent thinkers in this world. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure.